is Unit 5 for 5th grade, Murfreesboro City Schools, NF.3&4, using pattern blocks, rulers, Cuisenaire rods, and literature to teach the standards. NF3 is interpret a fraction as division. Okay, so let's do this we're going to start with some pattern blocks, and we're going to think that our yellow hexagon is a whole. Okay, so with this whole, we're going to have 5 yellow hexagons. 5 yellow hexagons. And we're going to take these yellow hexagons and divide them evenly among 3 teachers. 5 hexagons, we've got to divide these among 3 teachers. How could we show this concretely? And how could we show this abstractly? Okay, so we've got our 5, and each one of these, if we use our blue rhombus pieces, those show thirds of the whole. So if I'm doing 5 divided by 3, I can show that as a fraction, all right? If you divide 5 hexagons equally among the 3 teachers, each of the 5 hexagons will give it a third of itself to each teacher. So like each of these is going to give one of their thirds. If they were each of them is going to give one of their thirds, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thirds. Okay? So each teacher gets 5 pieces, each of which is a third of the hexagon. So we can say 5 divided by 3 this way, we just showed it as a fraction, equals 5 thirds. And we can say the 5 times 5 groups of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups of 1/3, because each teacher gets a third, is going to give me 5 thirds. And that's what each teacher will get. They will get 5 thirds. Now, we don't have to show it simplest form, but you could. So each teacher is going to get 1 whole and 2 thirds. All right, and you can do lots of different representations. You can use the Cuisenaire rods for this. You can use lots of different things when you're working with that standard, the NF3. Okay, now let's look at Unit 5. Also has NF.4, fraction times a whole number, and a whole number times a fraction. We're going to start this with a book, Full House. I love to use this book. It's a great book about a lady who owns a boarding house, and it's called Full House. And so as her guests come in, they are filling up this house. And here's Mrs. Bloom. The Strawberry Inn was run by Miss Bloom. Happy was she to fill every room, with 1 for herself and 5 for her guests. There were 6 rooms in all for a cozy night's rest. So each of the guests come in, and notice as they come in, they have the fraction of the whole. This person is 1/6 of the whole. You can do this also with pattern blocks if you want to. And here are all of her guests entering the house, all right? Now, the next thing we're going to think about with Miss Bloom is she has dinner every night. She's a boarding house, so they get their dinner with their room. So every night she has to cook all of these things for her guests. So we can, once we read the book, we can pose the question, all right? Including Miss Bloom, there are 6 guests in the house, okay? So let's look at this whole number times a fraction. And this is one of those things that's so good to use with recipes. So what if I say, okay, Miss Bloom is going to serve ice cream to her guest. And each guest is going to need a 1/2 cup of ice cream. If she has 6 times a 1/2, or 6 groups of 1/2, 6 groups of 1/2, How many cups of ice cream does Miss Bloom need to buy? All right, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this with Cuisenaire rods. So we're going to say the dark green is our whole. So let's look at this and see what would be 1/2 of the whole. Well, the dark green is my whole. My lime greens are my halves. So I need 6 of those halves. So I've got 1, 2. Let me put some more out here. 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 groups of 1/2. How many greens is that? I've got 1 green there. That's a whole. So I've got 3 wholes. 6 groups of 1/2 would give me 6 halves, or 3 wholes. All right? Now, that's one way. So think about that as you move through with the book. We could also show this with a ruler. We could show this with a ruler. Let's move this aside. Let's look at the ruler. How could we do that? What if I had 6 groups of 1/2? All right, so here we go. We've got our ruler here. All right. So here's my 0 right here. And there's a half. Another half. I'm at 1 now. 3 halves. 4 halves. 5 halves. 6 groups of 1/2. And I'm right there at the 3 inches, and I can see. So here's just my half. That's 2 halves or a whole. There's 1 1/2. There's 2. There's 2 1/2. And there's 3. 6 groups of 1/2 shown on a ruler would give me the 3. If you wanted to do another type of problem, or even just show this, this is a great way. You're showing it on a number line, because a ruler is a number line. Okay? So let's look at, that's another way. You can use your Cuisenaire rods, all that. Let's look at this. Okay? The next thing we're moving to, and this is the same standard, NF.4, we have to show that we can multiply fraction times a fraction. Now, we rarely use keywords, rarely use them, but for multiplying fraction times a fraction, your times is of. So this is 1/3 of 1/2. 1/3 of 1/2. All right, let's go back to our Cuisenaire rods that we just used, okay? First of all, I've got to find my half, right? My green was my whole. My light green, my lime green is my half. But I'm thinking about this half. I need 1/3 of that lime green, 1/3 of it. All right, so let's kind of build this. So these are my halves. Let's get this built. And these, let's see, if I use my reds, I can make thirds. Okay, those are my thirds. And then if I use my white cubes, I can make my 1/6. All right. Okay, now let's look. Now I'm gonna pull an extra one out so I can use it. I've got my half, and I need 1/3 of my half. If I use these pieces, I can show a half as 3/6, correct? That's from our equivalents. 1/2 equals 3/6, correct? Right? 1/2 is 3/6. So 1/3, what if that was like a chocolate bar? And I get 1/3 of that chocolate bar, 1/3 of the half. I get one of these. So my third of my half is my 1/6. It's my 1/6. That's how much I get. 1/3 of 1/2. All right, now let's look at this a different way because community property. If 1/3 times a half is a 6, then 1/2 times 1/3 should also equal 1/6. Let's see. 1/2 of 1/3. Okay, so here's my 1/3, the red. Okay, there's my red. All right. 2 of these white 6 is equivalent to the 1/3. So again, if I get 1/2 of this third, I get a 1/6. Enjoy your Cuisenaire rods and your recipes and use real life examples. And I hope that this helps you develop some deep understanding from the concrete to the abstract, and also with pictorial when sometimes we're using that. Use your eye ready as you go along and just incorporate these manipulatives.